Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Experience Grad York session, a discussion panel with current scholars. So we thank you so much for joining. If you do have any questions or comments throughout the presentation, please put them in the Q&A, and we're happy to answer them. Before we get into the substance of the panel, we'll do a land acknowledgement for the territory that York University is currently on. So York University recognizes that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York acknowledges our presence on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Toronto is caretaken by the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It's now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and this territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement to peaceably care and share for the Great Lakes region. Okay, so now that we've situated ourselves within that context, we'll move to the scholars joining us today, along with our Dean, Associate Dean, Dr. Cheryl van Daalen-Smith, who's the Associate Dean Academic at the Faculty of Graduate Studies. She will be moderating and leading today's panel. We're very lucky to have her, so welcome, Cheryl. Then we also have three graduate students, or in one case, very recent alum, joining us today. So we have Destiny Hopkins, an MA graduate from Communication and Culture. We have Samantha Johnson, a PhD candidate in the nursing program. And then Sihat Salam, a second-year PhD candidate in cell and molecular biology. So I'm just going to go through a bio for each panelist of these super accomplished students. So we'll do alphabetically. Destiny is a recent graduate for the MA in Communication and Culture joint program between York University and Toronto Metropolitan. During her studies, she worked as a research assistant at York, chaired the program's 2024 academic conference, and was a member of the LAMPS Graduate Student Advisory Committee, and was awarded an OGS, an Ontario Graduate Scholarship, for her thesis research. Her research interests span fan studies, environmental media, the politics of platforms, digital journalism, and social media influencers. She's happy to discuss how to find academic jobs as a new graduate student, coordinate a supervisory committee, and to apply for funding opportunities. Next up, we have Samantha Johnson, who is a master's prepared registered nurse and current doctoral candidate at York. She's a published qualitative researcher and has 13 years of experience in public health practice. Her doctoral research focuses on the perspectives and experiences of Ontario-based public health nurses with advocacy. And next we have Sihat Salam, who is a second-year PhD candidate in cell and molecular biology under the supervision of Dr. Peter Chung. And her project focuses on examining the role of crosstalk between histone, H3, phosphoacylation in the regulation of proto-oncogenic immediate early genes. She's also serving as a teaching assistant under QP 3903 for the Faculty of Science, supporting undergraduate courses and labs. Apart from her research, she's been actively involved in the community over the years since starting her undergrad and transitioning into the graduate program. And currently she serves as the chair of the Association of Graduate Students in the Biological Science and Science Graduate Student Representative on the Special Constables Working Group. So please welcome our wonderful student and grad. And Cheryl, take it away with questions.
I just can't help but think, how cool is this, everybody? All of you in the audience, I know you're there. Look at the people we have here, people that just graduated and people that are getting ready to graduate. They're going to be talking to you about their experiences here at York. Now, what I understand as the associate dean is it's a tough decision to think about applying to graduate school. Some of you might already have entered an application because I know the application's opened recently, and some of you are on the fence and thinking, "Wow, me? Really? And I want to say, yes, you, because if you have an area of passion, that's going to carry you through. So today's panel, we have a bunch of questions that we've thought about and they've prepared answers for. And a lot of the questions come from people just like you who are wanting to know these kind of things. So I'm going to go right at it. And if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. Take a look on the bottom of your Zoom and there's a Q&A box. You just have to move your cursor around. You can see that. Pop questions that you have in there. And later on, Eileen's going to be digging through them, answering some live, but digging through, and we'll be posing them to our panelists. So this question is going to be first for Sihat and then Sam. How did you learn about grad school and why did you decide to go? We'll start with Sihat.
First of all, thank you, Dr. Cheryl, for having me here today. Um, so interestingly, I actually never thought about grad school up until fourth year. So in fourth year, I started doing my honors thesis in, again, molecular biohistoepigenetics, and that got me interested in the project. And just because of, I wanted to say, the people and the lab environment, how I was involved with everything. My supervisor played quite a big role in this one as well. And I would say my senior PhDs in the program as well. So I got to know a lot about grad school, what it's like, what the community is like, um, what the day-to-day is like that I would love to share with everyone today. And yeah, so that just intrigued me and I just, wanted to continue on the project. So I thought, why not just do a 2-year master's, see where this project goes, because I did see the potential in this project. Um, and it goes to show that because this used to be my supervisor's postdoctoral project as well. So it's an extension of that. So it kind of felt a little bit personal as well. So I wanted to continue it. I did my master's and I thought that, well, there's a lot more to be done, a lot more work to be done still. So I thought, why not transfer onto the PhD program, which I did last year, and I just wanted to continue it onwards. And yes, I would say the main factors would be the project itself, the lab environment, and just having a good support system.
Thank you, Sihat. And Sam, how about you?
So I learned about graduate school from my colleagues at work. So I had been a public health nurse for about 3 years, focused on school health, and I was kind of, every 2 to 3 years, I get a little bit itchy to do something new. So I wanted to look at ways to build my capacity for advanced nursing practice, and I heard really positive experiences from colleagues who had been a part of York's program. So I applied, had a really good experience myself. And as I was finishing my master's at York, I heard about plans for the PhD of nursing program that was starting up and then applied for that as well and continued through.
Fantastic. Um, this is for Sam and then Destiny. What was your experience like when applying for your program? And do you have any application tips for folks applying or considering to apply? So I'll start with Sam.
So I would say for me, the application process for both the master's and PhD programs in nursing was very clear. The experience was relatively straightforward. What took a lot of time, or the most time for me to coordinate, was getting appropriate contacts to be references, more so for the master's program. So in terms of tips, I would make sure that you kind of review the application requirements thoroughly and leave more time than you think to
Mm.
gather needed aspects of the application, particularly time for you to get into contact with people who could be references or offer you letters of support. I also reached out to a few more contacts than needed because for my master's, I was reaching out to people who had seen me in an academic context in my undergraduate. So it might have been a number of years since we were
Mm.
last in contact. So I found that it was a good thing that I had initiated that process a bit earlier. So in retrospect, I would also, think about your network, think about your supportive colleagues, and it's easier if you maintain those relationships if you're considering grad studies, so that it's easier to access their support as you move along your journey.
Very helpful. How about you, Destiny?
So similar to Sam, I also had an experience with the time. I didn't decide on a program until just under 2 months before the deadline. So I applied kind of quite late during the application period, which ended up being a bit of a stressful situation in terms of getting the reference letters in. So my first tip would be to plan to get your application materials early in order to avoid some of that stress. I also used the library writing resources during my undergrad to help edit my statement of interest and some of the research that I was proposing. And lastly, I'd recommend reaching out to the professors in the program that you're applying to ask them about the work that they do that you might be interested in, and also to generally ask them if they think that the program would be a good fit for you, or even seeing if you can contact current students in the program to ask them for tips or feedback on anything.
I love this. I will say too, just as someone who's often asked for references, I find when students can give me an understanding of the program they're going into, what's the scope of the program, the mission of the program, the focus of the program. And I always actually ask them, tell me 3 or 4 or 5 things you really want me to stress in the letter. Because I think students assume we remember all of your marvelous things, and sadly, we don't remember all your marvelous things. So being super proactive with your referees is a good thing. This question is for Destiny and then Sihat. What advice would you give to a current undergrad student who's considering grad studies? What should they be doing, if anything, to prepare? Destiny.
So for my application, I needed to submit, I believe it was about 10 pages of a writing sample. So a good piece of advice is to take advantage of the undergrad course assignments that you're doing. So you already have something that can best represent your writing, research, and argument abilities that you just have to edit. As well, go to office hours and ask your professors about opportunities to work or learn more with them, because this helps to give you, like we were saying, a bit more of a personal reference letter and a chance to stand out.
Mm. That's excellent. Sihat, how about you?
For me, it might be a bit different for science. So I would say try to get as much research experience as possible. I know York has the research practicums, summer placements, co-op placements in different labs as well. We have Research at York, which is a paid opportunity. But again, whether or not it's paid or unpaid volunteer, I would
Mm.
say make use of these opportunities because not only is it going to help you understand, like, do you see yourself in research, but what is research like in general? On top of it, I would say try to contact potential supervisors. So, for example, if I hadn't contacted my supervisor back then, I wouldn't be in the current lab that I'm part of now. And, most of my undergraduate courses were very animal physiology heavy, and I thought that's what I wanted to go into. But it wasn't until I got to learn more about molecular bio that this is the route that I took. So, the most beneficial thing I would say is once you get into a lab, try to see that if you like the environment itself or not. And let's say you thought that animal physiology is your thing and you go into an animal physiology lab and you figure out that maybe that's not the thing for you. Two things I want you to answer is it because research isn't for me, or is it because the project and this lab isn't for me? Because these are two completely different things. Maybe you're not as aligned with the work that you're doing in your current research position. Maybe if it was in a different area or specialty, you would like it more. So these are things you need to figure out, but I would say that's what the undergraduate experience should be aimed towards as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So for folks just listening, don't forget you have the Q&A box and make use of it if you have questions. Some of them we can answer live. This next question is for Sihat and then Sam. What does an average day look like as a grad student? How much flexibility or independence is there? Let's start with Sihat, who's in the STEM field.
For sure. So I would say it varies between labs to labs. So even in science, if you're looking at biology versus physics, a lab in bio is going to be very different from a lab in physics. Similarly, if you're looking at different labs in bio and an ecology lab, which, if you're part of it, you would do some, let's say, bee research, you would be out in the environment collecting your data. It would be very different from if you are doing your cell work and you're stuck in at the tissue culture room all day. So for me, for mine, because I do a lot of cell work and gene modification, so I would be depending on the month, the week of the month. So for example, in the beginning of the month, it would be of a kind of a slow start where I'm kind of waiting, or I would say at the mercy of my cells. So waiting for them to grow, waiting for them to be confluent enough for me to actually do my experiments on them. Once I've, done my experiment on them and collected my, let's say, protein, DNA, RNA samples, I would analyze them. So the next few weeks would be intense lab work. So I'm looking at different experiments in order for me to analyze said modifications of histones that I'm trying to focus on, and enzymes per se. And I would say I love the flexibility. It's one of the things that actually drew me to grad school. So you get to make your own schedule. I would say it's more goal oriented rather than are you here a 9 to 5? It might be different for different labs, but especially for mine, it doesn't matter if I'm here 9 to 5. It's more so that the goals that I've set for myself and the goals I've communicated to my supervisor, are they being followed through? Um, and if not, then what can I do to get it done? And this, again, pros and cons of this. Pros would be, as mentioned, I get to pick and decide, also again, based on my cells and if they're growing well enough or not. And cons would be that, well, I get to start my days a little bit later. Again, the work-life balance too, it's up to you to figure that out. So for example, sometimes I'm here, for example, this weekend, I'll actually be here this week all day.
Hmm.
Um, the last couple of days, I wasn't in the lab because my weeks are shifted based on my experiments, and I get to choose when to do them and analyze the data for the next couple of weeks.
So if anyone else is lost about cells and labs and stuff, that's some students, like typically science students. Let's hear from Sam, and thank you for that, Sihat. Let's hear from Sam, who's in a nursing PhD. Go for it. What's your
Yeah.
day like?
So I will say resonate with Sihat's comments around kind of setting your own goals. That was the only aspect I would say. And you being very flexible and independent in terms of achieving the goals you set out for yourself. So my current day as a grad student is quite variable since I've completed all of my coursework, my field work, and I'm just working on writing my dissertation. So a typical day starts early for me so that I can dedicate some time to reviewing my draft, writing prompts for myself to broaden ideas that I've expressed or integrate new research. This primarily happens on the weekends for me because I do work full time or early mornings during the week. But I find that even when I'm not engaged in my dissertation work, there's this kind of everlasting presence of the work that where you're thinking about your writing. So I always make sure that I have kind of a notebook nearby. Cheryl gifted me a notebook at the start of my PhD program, and I still have it with me so that I jot down ideas so that when I return to my work, because it can be a little bit disjointing when you're kind of having very specific times to engage in writing. So it really helps me to jot down prompts for myself so that when I return to my work, I have a jumping off point.
Hmm. Fabulous. So structured at first, then not a lot of structure unless you're in lab. Sometimes there's more structure there. Awesome. Okay. Loving these. This question is for Sam and then Destiny. Did you apply for any grad scholarships or awards? If so, what was the application process like? We'll start with Sam.
I did, absolutely. So for my grad studies, I accessed funding through York's graduate fellowships. I also did teaching assistant and research assistant positions. I applied for a lot of external scholarships as well. So one I was awarded from the Registered Nurses Foundation of Ontario. I was awarded the SC Health Hope Scholarship. And I also accessed many of my workplace scholarships and applied for those and were awarded. In terms of the application process, they can be quite different. Some application processes are more extensive, some have application fees. So I would always evaluate the potential outcome and my capacity to apply. So I would say when you're looking at things that you can apply for, if something's gonna, sometimes it's about your time and your dollars and cents. So think about how much you have to put into the process for the potential reward. But I would say don't hesitate to apply because if everyone's thinking the same things, maybe these are things that are not being accessed. So I also applied for York's Research and Fieldwork Cost Fund when I was doing my research. And throughout my undergrad career, between all those different kind of pools, I almost was awarded just under $30,000 of different scholarships and awards. So it was definitely, and again, I stayed with the low investment, low time requirement applications, those that didn't often have fees to apply, and it was still a very supportive process.
Yeah, and that 30,000 included the fellowship that's given to doctoral students at York, right?
That was outside of,
That was outside of,
yeah,
wow.
so I didn't add up but I didn't add up
Wow,
the graduate
okay.
skills stuff. Those were just purely things that I applied to additionally.
Okay. Wow, thank you for that. And then we have Destiny.
Yeah, so I also had a fellowship from York as a master's student, and I worked as a research assistant along that. But I also applied for two external graduate awards when I entered grad school. And these were the Ontario, sorry, Graduate Scholarship and the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, or SSHRC Award. It's possible to actually apply for both of these while you're applying to grad school, but I didn't know about this beforehand. The process takes a little bit. So you need to submit a one-page research proposal, a CV, two referees, and your transcripts. And while I was in the program, I also applied for bursary awards within my program. So I found like a lot of students didn't know about some of the awards offered internally with York. So I'd recommend checking out the awards list and seeing which ones you'd be eligible for.
Yeah, and it's in the chat there. Our team has placed that in the chat for all of you. I also find when you apply for things, it sort of forces you, like you're on a timeline now, and it forces you to sort of make decisions around proposed methodology or research questions or whatever, and it propels you in your work. So I always like to suggest that people apply for at least one thing. Okay, this one's for Destiny. This is a good one. Destiny and Sihat, I bet you a lot of people in the audience want to know this. What are the workload or expectations like in grad school? And if you feel stressed, how do you handle stress? So why don't we start with Destiny?
Yeah, I definitely felt stressed in my 2 years. My program is split between 1 year of coursework and then 1 year of thesis or MRP writing. The workload was a lot of reading as the courses are mostly seminars. So I tended to create like Excel reading schedules in order to get it done and manage my time. A lot of the time it was like a book a week for some courses, which took a while, but
Yeah.
I also used that method to organize my assignments, though luckily they weren't as many in comparison to undergrad. And my program also doesn't have any like major tests or exams, which was nice. The second year where I wrote my thesis was a lot more stressful as I had to apply for ethics approval, conduct my own research, and then write a 150 odd page thesis. But I found working alongside friends, again, using my Excel time management strategy, and actually asking my supervisor to give me hard deadlines, which was very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't underscore how important it is to really have a good working relationship with your supervisor. That's awesome. Okay. Hat, how about you? What's the workload like? What are the expectations?
Yes, so for us, it's a bit different when you're comparing master's to PhD. So for master's, we actually do have to take courses. So it's one course per semester, versus if you're going into direct entry PhD, you actually don't have to do any coursework for that. The only thing you'll be focusing on would be either TA-ships and lab meetings. So lab meetings, depending on the lab, ours does once a week. So you're just checking in, you based on your rotation, you'll just be giving them an update once a month on what you're doing. And it's great to see, feedback from everyone else. And I feel that getting the feedback from everyone else actually helps with the stress of, again, am I not producing enough data, or what I'm doing, maybe something's not working. And it's good to have like other eyes on your work that way. For TA-ships, we have two different types. We have marker graders versus lab demos. So I'm a marker grader, so I just have to invigilate for midterms and exams and grade those. Versus if I'm doing lab demo for some semesters, especially in the summer, I'm actually like running the labs for undergrad students. And this could range anywhere from 3 to 6 hours per week, depending on your load for the semester too. And on top of it, I would say we do have year-end committee meetings where you're meeting with your supervisor and advisors. So it's really good, and but leading up to it, you're kind of stressed. You're always like, maybe I don't have enough data for the year, let's say. But once you actually get the other advisors, to look at your work, to give you advice on what to do next, it really helps manage the stress of what to
Mm,
do next, and not just, I'm doing my master's, am I going to finish in time? I'm doing my PhD, is this going to end in time? Am I going to have to take extra years? But it's your advisory committee who are actually in charge of, or who would just have to make sure you're on track to graduate on time. And if not, it's not going to be delayed for too long.
mhm. Yeah, and break it down into manageable chunks, right?
Hmm.
Rather look at the whole thing and go, whoa, just sort of break it right down and go, okay, today, this week, I'm going to look at this. Yeah, awesome. On a related note, this is for Hat and then Sam. How do you balance school, work, if applicable, and personal life. And yes, for all of you out there in behind the webinar, you do get to have a personal life because your well-being actually really matters to the Faculty of Grad Studies. And so we really want you to make time for that. So how about we hear from Sihat on that first, and then I'll go to Sam.
So I mentioned this a little bit earlier too. I can't stress enough how good it is for you to have a solid support system. Because, there's going to be days in the lab where, let's say you do an experiment 9 times and it's failed. And how do you motivate yourself to do it the 10th time? Well, it's only if you have a good support system that when I'm done in the lab and I go back home, that I'm not taking the stress with me. And it's good to like completely separate your work. When I mentioned work-life balance, that's what I mean. I would also say like being involved with extracurriculars, volunteering, the grad student association really helps because it's through these venues is where I got to meet some of the people who are great friends of mine, even now too. So I would say friends in the same field, you're all in this together, the importance of discussions, maybe just go for a little bit of coffee um, between a break, during a break. And you get to see how other labs are, approaching different concepts. And maybe that's going to give you like a little bit of a eureka moment, and you can come back and be more rejuvenized.
Love it.
For friends, outside of the field, I would say be involved in different sports. We have, different facilities on campus for sports and recreation. We have the gym on campus too. A few of us actually do end up going to the gym after work. And, it's great to just de-stress afterwards. This is also how, I end up getting into figure skating that escalated to rock climbing and snowboarding, and now I'm on the York fencing team. So, there's quite a bit you can do, and it's up to you and how you want to manage it. And again, keep the stress at work.
Yeah. Don't be surprised if there's a question in the Q&A about fencing. Sam, let's hear from you.
So in terms of my first response to when I was jotting down notes to this question, I said poorly. So I said poorly because it is super challenging to balance working full time and having a social life, and you have family responsibilities. It can be quite difficult. And as I mentioned earlier, it's quite difficult for me to kind of shut off and not think about my work, or, not be critical of my progress when I'm doing something socially that I was like, oh, this is time I could be dedicating
Yeah.
to my work.
Yeah.
But I realized on reflection that it is so important. I might not be doing an activity that is related to my dissertation work, but I am, by not doing that, I'm on a solid path to burnout. So I really strive now to prioritize time for replenishing activities, all of the normal things to support your mental health and well-being around, eating well, sleeping well, getting outside, going for walks. But also the connectedness piece that Sihat mentioned. I think I undervalued that as well in the earlier years of my grad studies. Again, I think at certain points of your studies, you can feel like every additional thing is just something you don't have time for. But when you connect with either in social ways with those in your program or outside of your program to take a break from your work, it has such a, rejuvenating, replenishing factor to it that you shouldn't undervalue. And again, a lot of wellness resources available from York that I could have taken more benefit from and access to.
Thank you for that for both of you. And I'll ask my team, if you haven't already in the background, maybe just pop in the chat sort of grad wellness services that we have, just so our audience knows that this really matters to us. Okay, this one's for Sihat and Sam. If you can describe briefly your working relationship with your supervisor and your role in establishing a respectful and helpful dynamic between the two of you. How did you meet them? How often do you meet? What's your role? What's theirs? Pick and choose what you like in there. So who did I say we would start with? I think it's Sihat. Yeah? Okay, please go ahead.
For sure. So I actually got to meet my supervisor. This was during peak COVID when courses were online. So I used to go to office hours for my third year molecular biology course. And, I just really loved the concept. This is the first course at especially York Bio where I got to be, exposed to all these different concepts for histone epigenetics. I just loved the work. I reached out to him. And at that time, because of COVID, he actually wasn't taking in students. So it wasn't until I would say midsummer when he reached out to me saying that there is an honors thesis position and if I would like to take it. And I thought that, well, me coming from absolutely no research experience, jumping into honors thesis might be a bit of a risk, but at the same time, these opportunities aren't always there for you, so you might as well make use of it. So I did my honors thesis and, in his lab and continued onwards, and I'm still in part of the same project. Um, I would say that my supervisor, he's really involved and he's always approachable. He has this open door policy where whenever you have a question, just feel free to knock on his door and he'll be able to assist you with anything. I might be a little bit biased because when it comes to my project, he's a little bit, again, as mentioned, this was a postdoctoral project. So again, it's a little bit closer to him compared to other projects in the lab, let's say. But he's always on top of keeping up with current literature. And yeah, just the importance of having a good communication channel with your supervisor and making sure that any expectations and goals are always well communicated to them. As as life happens, you may or may not meet these goals, but it's always important for you to communicate that with your supervisor as well. And maybe, when you have good advisors, as mine are Dr. Bayfield and Dr. Rosanina, they're always well aware of your project. So if you have questions that your supervisor might not be able to answer, you can always reach out to them and then figure out what the next course of action would be too.
Hmm. Thank you. I love in all of that was open communication and active open communication. Love
For
that.
sure.
Sam, how about you?
So I find that my working relationship with my supervisor and supervisory committee is really exceptionally supportive. At this point, I'm meeting with my supervisor every few weeks during this phase of my work, even if it's for a quick touch base, most often some encouragement, some things to help me keep persevering. My committee, has identified that it's helpful for me to work obviously more closely with my supervisor in terms of getting substantive feedback or as a first point to kind of get some support or direction or guidance. But all my committee members are accessible, available to meet, check in with me. I can reach out to them, text, email. And in that way, they're also a form of a connection that I'm able to leverage some pretty inspiring scholarly discussion. I connected with my supervisor by just looking on York's website. There's a list of scholars who are, available to take on students. And then I was able to kind of look at some of their background experiences, some of mine, see where there might be alignment, and then was able to reach out to a few individuals for some meetings to kind of discuss the potential of working together.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's certainly, we're going to move on, but there certainly is a real active role for students to have in the supervisory relationship. Eventually you drive it, but you're an equal player in all of that. And and I knew my team would put that. There's lots of help in the chat box for this. Awesome. How accessible, this is for Sam and Destiny. This came right from our participants. How accessible and supportive, again, the language of supportive keeps coming up, are your other professors and program staff and supports? I'll start with Sam and then we'll go to Destiny.
For sure. I find that there's a lot of support from professors and program staff at York. By doing my master's and my PhD at York, I've worked with a wide variety of professors within the nursing faculty and found that they're all very willing to share their experience, their guidance. They've even flagged job opportunities for me or, that have been aligned with shared goals we've discussed, and willingness to support my journey in terms of being references or even connecting with other colleagues that they think, oh, you should really talk to this person. They are involved in this work, or, I think you could get some benefit from that. So a lot of support across the board. And as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of program resources that on reflection I definitely underutilize. So I'd really, encourage you to take a look at the vast amount of resources that have been shared, particularly like the Writing Center, the Wellness Initiative. So, make sure you familiarize yourself with those and what's available in the landscape at York, and maximize that engagement.
Thank you, Sam. How about you, Destiny? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate to say that I've had just such amazing professors during my studies. During courses, for example, they were just incredibly understanding and often asked us for our opinions on assignments or even the syllabi. And as well, just showed a genuine interest in what I was working on and always asked questions, or encouraged me to pursue or even sent me opportunities. I also had like the best graduate program administrator, who answered any and all of my even sometimes silly questions minutes after I emailed them. GPAs are like a really great resource for info on funding, job opportunities, of doing conferences, and just general information about your program and requirements. And mine was just incredibly accessible, and I'd often just pop into her office to talk for a bit.
Awesome. I'm going to pass that on to the GPAs. They're going to be so happy to hear that their role, the centrality of their role came up. This is a cool question, worst, best kind of question. This one's for Destiny and Sihat. What is the hardest or most challenging part of being a grad student, and what's the best part? Destiny.
The most challenging part for me was dealing with imposter syndrome. I often felt like I wasn't doing enough while in my program, whether that be trying to publish, to get into conferences, which I didn't even know I could do as an MA when I first started out. However, my supervisor was a really great support in reminding me that I'm in the program for a reason. Um, and the best part was getting involved with my program's student association and running the academic conference in 2024, where we as emerging scholars could come together and discuss things that we're just so passionate
Mhm.
about. As well, in my program, we do study sessions and craft nights. Just the community aspect was something that I really, really enjoyed.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Sihat, I'm going to circle back to the imposter syndrome, but Sihat.
My answer was actually the exact same as Destiny's.
Yeah.
So, yes, imposter syndrome for sure, the most challenging part. And it gets to a point where you just can't help comparing yourself to others, whether it's
Mm,
the same lab or if it's others in the same program, maybe others who are finishing master's sooner and you're still taking extra semesters or extra years for PhD. And you can't help but compare yourself. But at the end of the day, it's good to know that everyone has imposter syndrome. So the person you're comparing yourself to, they're probably comparing themselves to you too, or maybe someone else in the program. And and it's also good to know that, no two people read the same book. So no two people have the same life experiences. So, like how you go about your program, it's a journey in itself. And how do you navigate that? And it's going to be different compared to you, with your friends, others in the program, even in the same labs too.
mhm.
The best part, again, the Grad Student Association. I feel that through this, I got to meet, like-minded individuals, people who are great friends of mine. Um, and just, the community aspect, as Destiny mentioned. It's all about, everyone's in this program, but how do you make it worthwhile for everyone? And all the time and effort everyone puts into it, because these are volunteer opportunities. You're not doing it for pay, or it looks good on the CV, but at the end of the day, you're doing it, to give back to the community, which you've benefited from over the years as well. And it's just great to see everyone come together end of the year too.
Yeah, so thank you. I am going to move on, but the imposter syndrome just keeps coming up over and over and over, and not just for uh, girls and women identified persons, but for all kinds of folks, um, and including profs. And so I don't know how we get past that, aside from remembering that the best way to feel rotten about ourselves is to compare ourselves to others. And it's just a lose-lose. And so for those of you in the audience thinking, wow, am I smart enough? Am I as smart as Destiny and Sam and Zihat? It's really more about, do you have the grit to see a project through and to see it in small, tiny chunks and to just hammer away at the little chunks. If you have an area of passion or you have a bunch of areas of passion, this is for folks in the audience, that you think you want to explore because you want to make a difference in the world, grad studies is for you. The rest happens. We teach you it. Um, so enough about that. Tell the dean stop talking, right? This one's for Sam and Destiny. What's your experience with the campus infrastructure, libraries, labs, study spaces, campus services, wellness, teaching, just in general? We'll start with Sam.
Yeah, so in general, I mostly access the like libraries and services and recently the writing center. And I found everyone that I've engaged with to be very helpful and well-versed in supportive resources that enhance your research endeavors and support your progress in your work.
Oh, thank you. Destiny.
Again, yeah, I was mostly with the libraries. They do a
Mhm.
lot of workshops. I went to a couple last year on a digital service called Zotero, which helps to file a lot of PDFs that you're working with, and you can separate them into different functions. And so they went through an in-depth thing, workshops on how to do that. York also has a really great graduate student library area that's only accessible to grad students. So it's honestly, it's very quiet in there all the time.
Mm.
It's basically just work uninterrupted for several hours. And oddly enough, but super important, the chairs are very comfortable there as well.
That's super important for sure. There's all kinds of supports, everybody, just so you know that. Like there's so many. That's one thing York's super good at. We're getting close to our time to turn to the questions from our audience, but I don't want to miss these. And Sihat, I wondered if, since you offered, generously offered, we had some students, some prospective students, want to know what is the experience like for grad students of color? If you want to speak to that, and I do thank you for agreeing to speak to that.
For sure. When it comes to grad students of color or just people of color, I find that York as a commuter school, whether it's the undergraduate student body, grad student, or even the faculty too, it is very diverse. I've never actually felt left out or I felt any different from any of my other peers. And, it goes to show that, everyone is part of the program and everyone is supportive. Like you have the sense of community, and just because you're a person of color, you're not othered by any instance. This also extends to if you're part of the LGBTQ society. So even then, like I have friends who are grad students who are part of LGBTQ, and they've never felt ostracized, and everyone is part of the same group. And um, yeah, my pitch for science would just be that we're having our new incoming dean, who is Dr. Megan Andrade. She's actually the co-founder and president of the Canadian Black Student Scientists Network. And yeah, she's always been a strong advocate for women in STEM as well. So if you want to consider, that's something I would want to mention.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. That's cool. So, what are your next steps? Destiny, I'm going to go to Destiny first, then come to Sam because Destiny, you've just finished your master's. So, folks want to know, what are you doing next?
Yeah, so I'm actually still working as a research assistant. I've been doing that since I first started in the program. That's actually how I met my supervisor. So I'm continuing to work with her. I'm taking a bit of a break from school before pursuing a PhD because I think I need it. I've just done 6 straight years, so I think a year is good for me.
Yeah.
But that's the current plan right now.
Yeah. Nice. And Sam, when you're done, you're very busy writing and
Mhm.
making sense of everything you've studied. So, what would be next for you once that is
Sure. So
finished?
the next steps are to finalize my dissertation and, of course, prepare for defense. And after my studies, I plan a long vacation. I don't know where yet, but like Destiny said, a good long break. And then to just continue to look for opportunities to integrate the new knowledge and skills that I've developed into advancing nursing practice and public health. When I started my program, I didn't have a particular end goal or career in mind. It was just more about continuous learning and that openness that nursing, particularly as a profession, allows you that versatility. So the next stages are just to be open to whatever opportunities present themselves.
Yeah, I too, for me too, I went into grad studies because it was sort of like a hobby. I didn't really have some big goal. I knew I wanted to learn more and understand more. Um, so my last question before we turn to Eileen and our questions in the chat are why choose York University for grad school? Start with Sihat. Why choose York?
That's a great question. Sometimes I ask that to myself too. So, um, when I when I think about York grad, I could, talk a lot about the amazing research scholars that we have who are renowned in their field. They're part of international consortiums, research societies. They're all funded by, or at least most of them are funded by tri-council agencies such as NSERC, CIHR, or SSHRC. But that's actually not why I even chose York. That's what I found out after I chose York. Um, I would say it always boils down to the project and the people. So, are you aligned with your project? Is this something you feel passionate about? Because if this wasn't, if I wasn't feeling as passionate about this, I would just stop at master's, or maybe I wouldn't even continue on to master's. let alone do a whole PhD. And the people, the environment play a pretty big factor in it too. Because I don't think if I had such a supportive, wholesome lab environment, or even just the friends that I made along the way, I don't think I would have continued on. Maybe I would have gone to a separate project, maybe consider a different university, because I did apply to a few other universities when I was applying for my master's. But all in all, it was, again, the project and the people. And
Okay.
I want to say, like, think of the degree as not an end goal. The degree is more so a journey, and you get to choose who you want to be on this journey with you. So I feel like even if I had to go back in time, I'd do the exact same thing.
Amazing. Thank you, Sihat. How about Sam?
So I actually dusted off my personal statement from applying to my master's program, and I actually said things that ring very true at this point. So I said at that point that I was interested in York's Master's of Nursing program because I'm sure that engaging in this forward-thinking, caring curriculum will act as a vector towards my development of effective leadership and the advancement of nursing practice globally. I've heard many positive remarks from colleagues and peers about their experience in this program and how they've benefited from the instruction of professors who have done so in the spirit of human science philosophy. I also appreciate the versatility and the innovation of the program structure, utilizing technology to allow for a greater cross-section of participants and diversity of experiences through distance learning. And I just found that the parallels between the program philosophy and my personal and professional value systems make this program best suited to facilitate my graduate education. So that was from many, many, many years ago. I'd say that it all rings very true. So if any of those things appeal to the listeners, I would say that's why I've chosen and am happy with my choice of York for graduate studies.
Thanks, Sam. And Destiny.
Yeah, I chose York mainly for the program. I'm coming from a different institution for the undergrad, but this is my program's really interesting because it's split between York and TMU actually. And I chose the York side because um, one, I really enjoy the campus on the York side. I prefer it's like its own little city. York's campus, is its own little world. That was one thing that was really important for me. As well, the professors at York are just like some of, again, of what Sihat said. Um, they have such interesting research that's going on, and just their interests aligned really well with me. The support at York was great, even just emailing for, general information before I'm applying. Like they had such wonderful things to say about what was going on here. So
Amazing. Okay, I'm going to thank you. You're not off the hook yet, you panelists. I'm going to hand over to Eileen, who will sift through some of the questions in the Q&A. So welcome back, Eileen.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for answering your questions. It's such a privilege to get to sit in these sessions and just hear your experiences. So many questions came in that kind of lined up with like a question that had already been answered, or what you spoke about resonated with that, but we still do have a bunch. So I'll get started on this one. We have a current undergrad student at York, and they're struggling with whether to decide to stay at York or diversify for their MA. How did you kind of make a decision about that between maybe staying at the same institution or going to a different one? And maybe Cheryl, you could jump in on this one as well.
We'll start with who would like to start? We'll get one of you to answer this question maybe, and I can hop in as well. Or if you just want me.
I can jump in. Just
Okay.
I did my undergrad at what's now TMU, and it's a very different experience. So coming to York for my master's, I think it was important for me at that point to have a different experience, a different environment. So I do think there was a little bit of value in a different perspective, but in terms of the experience of my master's and then continuing my grad studies into my PhD at York, um, it was because I was enjoying the program, enjoying the learning environment that was created. So those were kind of factors that I considered when deciding whether or not to continue or diversify in terms of the university.
Now, the conventional wisdom is don't be samey. Don't do your undergrad at grad. Don't do both grad degrees at the same space. But then there's people like Sihat who, they find a space and there's enough breadth in the space and enough of a challenge. And so for the asker of that question, the conventional wisdom is, spread your wings unless you maybe have found a really safe space, if safe and something that grows you. But I wouldn't say do all three. That's typically not invited, but it wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, getting into grad school and then getting into another grad program is not a bad thing. Eileen, what's up next? Let's go to another one.
Okay. Someone specifically asking about what does work on your thesis or dissertation look like? Are there specific deadlines? Is it like a full week of research, a full week of writing? Like, how do you balance that, handle that, and how do you make progress when you don't feel motivated?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go to Sam on this one. Sam's going to speak from the perspective of somebody working full time, so navigating working full time with grad.
Yeah, so writing my dissertation, it a lot of it does, as Cheryl was saying earlier, depend on you to keep yourself motivated and set your schedule in terms of when you're engaging in writing. After you finished your field work and you just have all of this data, it's up to you to, of course, transcribe, analyze, identify your themes, identify your findings, pull in your theoretical scaffolding, and all of that happens with a lot of openness. So in the last 2 years of the program, where it's just aimed to be your dissertation, you are really self-scheduling and determining how you're progressing forward. Of course, with your supervisor and your committee, and you have a handbook that kind of goes over ideal timelines, but life can happen in between, and there are adjustments that need to be made. So how to keep motivated when you're not feeling motivation. I'm open to tips as well, but it's really just trying, as Cheryl said, those small incremental pieces to keep you moving in a forward direction. So I've gotten advice from Cheryl to say, tinker around with your table of contents. And if that is the most you can do on a particular day, that is still forward momentum. Sometimes it's just reading over a chapter and kind of, if I'm feeling a little bit kind of blocked in terms of writing, maybe it's just rereading and prompting and putting some notes for myself to revisit at a later point. So it can look different. It's a highly, it can be a little bit of an isolating journey, but that's where you really have to make that effort to stay connected to different communities that you can help to motivate each other. And I found, like I said, now that I've accessed that in a bit of the later stages, I'm like, oh, wow, this is super helpful. And I'm sure Cheryl told me at the beginning, but you kind of need to go through your own process and then be like,
You
okay,
do.
this is how I feel best supported, or in terms of, accomplishing the goals that I have set for myself.
Eileen, I think we might have room for one more question, you think?
Definitely. Which is good because there's like a consistent theme that's kind of coming up in these. People are really worried about how they're going to find a supervisor when they're not a York undergraduate student. How do you reach out? What if they don't respond? Just like how do you make that connection when you kind of feel further removed because you're not like you haven't taken a course with them or you don't know them. So any advice anyone has on that?
Yeah, maybe Destiny, do you think? Yep.
For sure. Um, so my program, we didn't have to have a supervisor going into it. They just encouraged us to have secured a supervisor in our committee by the start of the second year. But I was able to reach out with my supervisor and then land my research assistant position by cold emailing, which actually works. I had attended a session for the program where everyone was going around introducing themselves. And my supervisor had introduced some of the research that she was working on. So I followed up the next day and I was like, hey, this sounded really interesting. Just wanted to talk with you, maybe get something going. And then we had a Zoom meeting and we went from there. So it works out. It's a little daunting. I was scared going into it. But most professors want to help you. They want to support you. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay, Eileen, back to you.
Wonderful. And yeah, just to add to that as well, like professors need graduate students just as much as graduate students need professors. Like it's a symbiotic relationship there. I'm just going to quickly pop up the grad admissions email slide so that if anyone has any questions about this event, about grad applications, admissions period, please feel free to reach out at any point. We're happy to help. But for today's session, just thank you so much, everyone, for coming, attending, engaging, asking great questions. Cheryl, any last words from you?
I just want to remind everybody that if you're thinking about grad studies, you know you want to do it. So just apply. Just put your in the ring and apply. If you don't get in, apply again. And Destiny, Sam, and Sihat, for all the grit you have in applying, in journeying through your degrees and bringing your insights, we just really are grateful. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a terrific day, and very soon we'll be signing off.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.